When you think of Pat Cummins, you think of speed. There has been plenty of that so far in his career, but there's also been the speed of his batting. Despite the fact that Pat Cummins has batted in just over half of his career T20 matches. In his first 48 games, that didn't matter much, because in that time he averaged 6 with the bat and scored less than a run a ball. There was simply no reason for him to be batting more than he was. Since then, he has averaged 25 while striking at 150, and this didn't happen by accident. Neither did his annihilation of the Mumbai Indians the other night. Pat Cummins took 35 runs from Daniel Sams in an over, and those two go way back. Sams, like Cummins, is from Sydney. They are within a year of each other in age, and when Cummins was the golden boy recovering from his back injuries, Sams was trying to get a game with either of the two Sydney-based T20 franchises. In that time, he was often a net bowler, and there was a fair chance he bowled regularly to Cummins. They even overlapped at Sydney Thunder in 2018 when Cummins didn't play a game, and in 2019 when he played one. And between 2012 and 2017, Cummins spent much of his time working on his batting. When he wasn't jogging on weightless running machines, he took a little bit of the natural batting talent he clearly already possessed and spent years honing it in the SCG nets. Bowling machines, throwdowns, and yes, net bowlers. Yes, hi Daniel Sams. And net bowlers like Daniel Sams and probably everyone else who was in New South Wales who could bowl at that point. By the 2016-2017 summer, Cummins was finally close to fully fit, and he was bowling very fast. But I suppose we expected that, because that's what we'd seen before. But he was also batting very well, and that wasn't exactly what we expected. He did hit the winning runs in a test match quite early on, but no one thought of him as a genuine batting talent at that point. When I rocked up to a big bash game in early 2017, I saw the Sydney Thunder taking on the Melbourne Stars. And when the Stars took the 4th wicket, Pat Cummins came out to bat at number 6. Now, there are some things that you need to know about this. There were 7 overs left to come, and Andre Russell was actually due in next. After that was Jay Lenton, who's a wicketkeeper, and Chris Green was also playing. At that stage, I would have expected almost all of those players to come in before Pat Cummins. Certainly Andre Russell, probably Jay Lenton, and even with Chris Green's inconsistent hitting, you would have thought he'd come in before Cummins. But then I checked the scorecards of the previous games, and Cummins had been smashing the ball everywhere, innings after innings. 30 from 20, 36 from 23, and 39 from 26. I still don't know if any of that was justification for him to come in ahead of Andre Russell. But after a scratchy knock, the Thunder needed 16 from the last over, and Cummins was batting with Owen Morgan. At one stage, Ben Hilfenhaus delivered a length ball to Cummins, and he drop-kicked it over the boundary for 6. Last ball, Morgan did another, and they won the game. By this point, I'd already heard a lot of stories about Cummins working on his batting. I mean, what else could he do when he was injured so much? But this was different. Now he was batting at number 6 in a decent lineup, and hitting a test bowler for 6. And before this run of knocks, he had more did-not bats than he had innings. And he'd never actually passed 14. At that point, I actually left the game wondering if Cummins could be a real, genuine number 6. To this day, he's only batted that high 2 other times in his entire career. In fact, after that run, it took him another 3 years to score more than 30 in a T20 game again. What I had witnessed was probably Cummins' peak batting form, because he'd basically come off all of those injuries, had been batting so much in the nets, went out in the middle and made runs game after game after game. Everything else he's done since then has been a little bit more sporadic. But I think we have enough evidence now that Pat Cummins can hit occasionally, and when he does, it's usually very fast. So all that hitting and planning and practicing against Daniel Sams came together pretty well when Cummins equaled the fastest 50 in IPL history. He made his 56 off just 15 balls with 6 sixes and 4 fours at a strike rate of 373. Computer game numbers. But this was only Pat Cummins' third 50. And all 3 of them have come in an awful hurry. In fact, other than that one innings I was at, every time he has scored over 20, it's been at a strike rate of 147 or higher. Now, there haven't been many scores over 20. Partly because he hasn't batted in almost half of his matches. But from the little evidence we actually have, he looks like one of the best death hitters in the world. Since the 2020 IPL season began, there have been 61 players face 100 balls of pace. Guess who has scored the quickest? Yes, it's Pat bloody Cummins. I thought he would be high on this list, but this is very high. Obviously that was topped up by the 50 the other night, but he was doing pretty well on this list beforehand. And he's not doing it at a bad average either. He just absolutely loves smashing pace, and he's been doing it very well for a while now. This is the kind of record you would expect of someone like Andre Russell, not Pat Cummins. but actually Cummins has outperformed Russell in this recent period. Against pace, of course. Because here is his record against spin in the IPL and that same time. He goes from the quickest player of pace to the slowest against spin. You know, that's actually not quite true. Let's look at the entire picture here. And it's not that unknown for a player to do this. Many players actually pick and choose what they want to attack. Jadeja is the second quickest against pace, but is the third slowest against spin. But his average is still fine. Cummins' average and strike rate fall together. He simply cannot play spin in T20 cricket. And of course, these numbers are just from the last couple of years of the IPL, but Cummins has struggled to score quick against spin right across his T20 career. It's why despite his great record, you won't really see him ever up the order. He's perfect for the last 4 overs. Weirdly enough, against Mumbai when he equalled this record, he didn't actually come in right at the end. His innings started in the 14th over, and Mumbai had 2 spinners left, M. Ashwin and Tilak Varma. There was actually still time in the game for spin, but Mills was midway through his over, and the next over, Rohit Sharma decided to get an advantage with Jasprit Bumrah. And then he brought Daniel Sams on for the following over. Of course, that did not go so well. The Bumrah over makes sense, but with Cummins at the wicket, probably the Sams over just should have been spin. In fact, when Cummins is in, it's almost always worth trying spin if you have someone around. Weirdly enough, that Cummins actually plays spin better in other formats, but his main problem seemed to be in T20. And I wonder how much of this comes from all the hours he faced with throwdowns and bowling machines in those SCG nets. How many bowlers have ever faced the amount of balls that Cummins has, especially at a very important point in their development? 5 years barely playing probably helped him develop his hitting like few others ever have. But perhaps so much time on the ball machine and with throwdowns didn't help when it came to the spinners. He does kind of bat like a throwdown guy. He can essentially hit or block, and he has no real middle gears to go to. A committed blocker in tests and a committed slogger in T20, saying that he wants to try and hit every ball for 4. His batting is in 5th gear or with the handbrake on. However, what Pat Cummins really did in those SCG nets was work out how to be an ideal number 8. And it's this hitting that has inflated his IPL price at times, especially when his bowling hasn't always backed up his talent. We know that Pat Cummins can bowl pace, and we know he can hit pace, which is probably something that Daniel Sams knew before the other day.